You know, I sure hope nothing bad happens. Now that Samura has his sword back, it should be pretty easy. We can win these fights, we can balance out the playing field, everything is in our favor. Well, we were wrong. And like, not even slightly wrong, like no one expected this wrong. And there's still murkiness here, right? There's still an unknown element that is not entirely clear. We're playing into very, very strict ideologies, right? Something that Samura has given us bits and pieces of, but there was enough of it to make us believe that we fully understood the type of character that he was, but now kind of going into a radicalist mindset. So take what we knew about him, amplify it by like 10, and him potentially being perceived as the only person that could accomplish it, maybe the only person that could verse as someone as powerful as the Master Swordsman, which is the wielder of Shinichi or Magatsumi. Very problematic, very disastrous. It has not gone the way that we thought, which overall is a good thing, but I actually hate this approach. And not that I think that it's bad writing or anything, but I hate that innocent people are potentially going to get caught up in this. Specifically, Uruha. So it is not looking all too good. I don't even want to do a recap or explain. Let's just start with Samura because we're in an odd position, right? Samura's got his sword back, everything looks sweet and in our favor, people are winning. Hatshaku is not in a good place and he dips out too. They're done. Their entire force was gambled on this temple, so now, realistically, there's no one to attack the other temples other than the remaining Shaku members, which are definitely strong but don't want to put themselves in that position. We're in a good place. We're smooth sailing from here. You know, jump over to the other temple, Hikari can get some treatment, get the swords back, done, right? But that wouldn't be an enjoyable story, would it? We have a bit of a problem, and it comes in the form of Samura, not only being our savior, but potentially also our worst nightmare. And of all the people that we know of, Samura seems to be, I guess, one of the legendary swordsmen, right? Someone that is a master that is also wielding an enchanted blade. And so far, there's kind of only one other person we know that to be a thing for, at least kind of, and that is Magatsumi or Shinichi. The way they talk about that wielder is different compared to everyone else. And originally we thought, okay, maybe the sword was corrupting the user, but it's implied that the user can also corrupt the sword, that it's a problem of the user and not the sword itself. Now that does not negate the idea that Magatsumi or Shinichi needs to feed and is very viral and parasitic, but it also doubles as a representation of its user. So that leads us to a question. If there was anyone that could kill that wielder, it would probably be Samura. The reason this is problematic is because if you take Samura's personality now, how he thinks about the swords and the bearers, it seems pretty normal. Like it's heightened a little bit, but it makes sense from what he's experienced, what he's gone through, and what he's sacrificed as being one, right? But now it's becoming turbulent, it's becoming radical, it's becoming I need to kill all the other sword bearers so no other ones are in control. And that leads you to a very odd scenario because it doesn't really make sense unless he's blinded by that sheer fact. See, Samura has the opportunity to kill all the sword bearers if he wanted to, if he was evil, and this would be kind of like his blind justice, so no other people would have to become a sword bearer and those sword bearers wouldn't be shackled to a lifestyle that they're living, yada yada, everything's sweet and simple. There's probably this weird cycle of him thinking that if bad people wield it, it might be okay, but that doesn't really make sense in terms of Shinichi or Magatsumi. We don't know who that is or what that is or why that person is so evil or corrupt, but clearly people aren't really messing with it, and Samura wants that person gone, so it doesn't really make sense to me why he would want Uruha gone as well. The only logical explanation you can give is that he needs Yura and Hirohiko to have a sword to get to Magatsumi. Now you might ask yourself, why wouldn't he just give up his own life? Well, there might be the idea that Samura might invade the Tokyo headquarters with Yura and Hirohiko to fight Magatsumi because he is the master swordsman, putting those pieces together. However, this oddly doesn't really align with his original mentality towards his people and the fact that he wants to save people and the fact that he wants to keep people out of danger. That's the issue. So there's kind of a very big confliction, and depending on how radicalized it's become, or if he's like a sleeper agent or something else has happened in terms of sorcery or whatever, we just don't know. At the worst of it, Yura and Samura have a deal. Samura can't get out of that deal, and over the years he might have changed his mind but is still stuck to it, and eventually has to give a sword up. Uruha is the closest and probably only person that he could get to, kind of in convenience sake, and he kills him. That's the worst outcome. And the reasoning is that potentially Samura, Yura, and Hirohiko can fight Magatsumi. But then it kind of goes down this weirder path of Yura wielding Magatsumi himself, which is kind of a counter opposite to what Samura would actually want, unless Samura thinks it's his burden is to kill the master of Magatsumi right now, and then also kill Yura and Hirohiko when they have their respected swords all in one place. Does that make sense? The better outcome is that somehow, some way, he was able to disconnect Uruha from his sword contract. Maybe you could partially kill someone so they pass out or their heart stops beating and then you can potentially bring them back. Maybe it's a way to skip over the contract and release it so someone else can wield it. He still has a deal with Yura and that's the issue. But maybe because he's changed over the years and, this is the better version, he has a way to disconnect people from the contracts and bring them back. One very depressive and tragic, the other painfully hopeful. Whatever path you pick, whatever idea you think of, we're not in a good position. And Samura has all the answers to what we need to know. And will we ever find out? Most likely. But there's definitely more to this situation than just straight evil. I don't think Samura is a straight out traitor. I think his emotions and his ideology are very much spinning back and forth radically and have opposite effects to what he would think. They don't align properly, and I think that's the point. Unless he's trying to think really far into the future, that he is the only master swordsman that can kill the current Magatsumi and Yura with Magatsumi and try and clean up everyone on the plate without dragging anyone else into the picture. So obviously we had that big surprise, which means we get Chihiro versus Hirohiko round 2. But this time it's very different because the sword that Hiko has is Uruha's, which we've never seen before. And the reason we know that Uruha has been somehow killed or disconnected from the contract is because Hiko's sorcery, his paper one, crumbles into nothing as soon as he grabs the sword with his mouth, which means he has made the contract with the sword. You lose your sorcery. Now, a couple of things. This man doesn't have any arms. He is wielding the sword by his mouth, trying to unsheath it, which, bravo to him. Very, very impressive. Even though the sword is halfway unsheathed, he's managed to summon its ability already. This is someone that is incredibly adaptable, very potent, but it's still impressive that he's able to wield the sword this way, in this position, in this condition, and still have a good fair go. I like this. Not only is it incredibly problematic for Chihiro because he's just watching a monster be born in front of his eyes, it's also just impressive to see. If this is what he's capable of this early, imagine him in the future. Imagine him with time. He's going to be a problem, 100%. This is Sojo 2.0. This is all the things that the author could have done with Sojo is now happening right here. At least for now, that's what it looks like. So we're going to get that fight, and I'm very excited to see that. Chihiro versus Hiko, 2 enchanted blades going at it, one more experienced than the other, but we're seeing Uruha's sword for the first time, which is always interesting. And even like the weird, ghostly, kind of beautiful women that spawn out of the sword, very cool, very creative. I'm super excited to see what that sword represents. And I know people have teased it and theory crafted about it, but seeing it in action is a whole different thing. So I'm very, very excited. Before all of that and the sword even comes down, I love the back and forth conversation that Hiko and Chihiro have. And it's in regards to the swordsman and Chihiro's father and being called a hero. It's really just providing a lot of important context and value to the perception of heroes and the enchanted blades and the sword bearers, and how that is incredibly skewered and surface level. See, we knew something like this was going to happen for a very long time. We just didn't know how they would go about it. For us, it made more sense that Magatsumi and that bearer would be the pinnacle of a wrongful representation of these people being heroes, right? But it's happening now and in a very different way. Samura, Yura, Hiko, the sword bearers making deals. Who knows what they're trying to accomplish? But everyone is being weaponized in some way. And on top of it, seeing Hiko come out alive is impressive. Like I said before, this changes a lot of things. I don't know what happened to Uruha. Samura's death was a red herring, yet he also could be the killer. A big traitor. Clearly, the waters are incredibly murky, but I am happy that we are going to get a showcase of Uruha's sword, which will most likely be interrupted, but at this point, I don't really know where we go. This has shook the community to its core, but I'm sure we're all very excited to see how the author handles it, what things are going to unravel from here.